Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is 3:32. Let's kick off. Really appreciate everyone being online with us. We're expecting about 150 people today, and we've clicked through 3 figures, and we'll just keep. So it's a first for us. This is the first of our FSC Connect series. Like all of us, we've all had to pivot, rethink things, and go, how do we stay involved, engaged, and add value? And so the launch of FSC Connect, which started life as an email series on a weekly basis to keep members in the broader financial services community in the loop, has now evolved to that, but also these series of events, which we're now going to be running twice a week. So it is a first, so we're in a test and learn environment. It's probably not going to be all perfect today, so apologies for that, but obviously really interested in people's feedback as we go through. So a very warm welcome to everyone. It's funny to be here, frankly. It's now 2 weeks into lockdown. The FSC team went a week early, so it's actually 3 weeks for us. And that was about kind of staying safe. And I'll show you a slide in a moment, just how rapidly COVID-19's kind of become the only issue of the day. It's obviously very stressful times. It's very frightening times. And for all of us who are globally connected, I'm sure we've got friends, family, colleagues, locally, regionally, and globally. And to see some of the frightening stuff coming out of some parts of the world and compare and contrast to how we are in New Zealand, is a blessing that we're here, but it's also it's pretty frightening. I've got friends in Southern Africa, in the UK, in the US, obviously in Australia, and some of the stuff going on in some of those parts of the world are really confronting. So, you know, I think all of us have to deal with the convergence for the personal and the professional on a daily basis as we juggle dining room tables, kids walking in and out of our rooms, pets, and then also keeping ourselves focused and kind of mentally attuned, but also just, you know, with a well-being lens. So that's part of what this is about. It's kind of trying to connect people, share what's going on, share some of the joy and share some of the pain. And I think ultimately we'll come through this together. So that's a little bit of a frame up of today. Over the next 25 minutes, Rob and I are going to try and share with you where the FSC's been over the last 3 to 4 weeks. And I'll invite Rob to kick off. Just a couple of things, just housekeeping things. This is obviously a very interactive session. If you've got questions, I note someone's already found the Q&A button down the bottom of your Zoom. Feel free to ask some questions. David at the FSC is moderating through the presentation. We'll try and go to it and try and respond to questions as we go through. And we'll try and get the talking bit done over the next 10 or 15 minutes, and then allow some time for discussion. So without further ado, Rob needs no introduction. He's the chair and has been the chair of the FSC for now a number of years, and works very, very effectively both with the board but also with the management team. So Rob, over to you, and I will just move the slides on.
Okay, thanks Richard, and as Richard has said, this is a bit of a new environment for us, so forgive the amateur TV stars, I guess, to do, you know, that, see how the technology goes, etc. So first of all, I just wanted to set out this, the FSC's strategy, and everything we do is all around our strategic intent, and those 3 points at the top of the slide there: strong and sustainable consumer outcomes, sustainability of the financial services sector, and increasing professionalism and trust in the industry. And everything we do has to align to that. We are recognised as an essential service, and we may not be the first responders, but we must be there for the long term as New Zealanders rely on achieving the promises that we have made. In our contracts we have made promises for the future. And so with this recognition as an essential service, it really, responsibility comes from this, and it's very real responsibility, and especially to the country at a time when we're going through events that are really disrupting every part of the economic structure, which we are an important part. The key to all of this is trust, and it's so important that whatever we do through this environment, we will be showing the best of things that we do and the worst of the things that we do. So we need to be very conscious that a lot of people are relying on our judgment, a lot of people are relying on our service delivery. And so the question I think we all have to keep asking ourselves is that we must do the right thing for all of New Zealand, because that's our sustainability as we go forward. We achieve our strategic intent through the 5 pillars: policy and advocacy. And as a result of that pillar, if you like, we have a very close relationship with the regulators, with government, etc. During this time, we're almost having daily engagement with the regulators, and the team is fully involved. I'd have to say we have earned a level of trust in the industry with the regulators, I believe, and we need to treat that very, as a very precious, because we can lose that very quickly. And so a lot of work, a lot of intellectual property comes out of our industry, and it goes through sort of a process and vetting so that the regulators get the right information and real information that is impacting us. So goes through to that leads into the next pillar really, which is industry leadership and insight. So the FSC's role really is facilitating all our membership and research and IP, etc., and bringing that together. The industry, the FSC itself, obviously as individuals we all have views, but in fact the depth of what we present comes from the membership at all time. The third pillar is industry best practice, and this is underpinned by our code of conduct. We do have a code of conduct. It has been signed off. Everyone is complying with it, and everyone has a very real obligation to comply with it. So it is alive and well, and it is important just to refer back to that code of conduct so that we are delivering really transparent and good consumer outcomes. So really important. The fourth strategic pillar is the community of professionals, and I can't emphasize this enough, that firstly our members are our strength, but everything that we do in our organisations, whether you're on the call centre, whether you're sweeping the floor, in effect, everything has to be done professionally, and because as an essential service, the economy is actually relying on it, which in turn means all New Zealanders are relying on us being successful, and of course all our customers are relying on it even more. So we do have very real responsibilities, and I can't really emphasise that enough. And of course the last pillar is just developing the FSC, and this is really being agile, changing, continuing to change to meet the changing expectations of New Zealanders. And of course, we've tried to step up over the last month because of the environment that we're in. So all of this all aligns, and really just to make sure that we are the voice of the New Zealand financial services. It all aligns to our vision, and at this, I just can't emphasise enough, do not underestimate the importance of what we all do at this particular time. There is very real responsibility. It's not something to do with during the day. This is quite real, and a lot is riding on our outcomes that we achieve. So I think that's all my really introduction. I just wanted to set the baseline, what the FSC starts from. And back to you, Richard.
Thanks, Rob. Folks, what I'll try and do is just frame up the last 3 weeks of activity and hopefully give you a little bit of insight into where we've come from, where we're at, and kind of where we're heading, and a little bit of an outlook. Hopefully you can see this slide as it builds. It's pretty frightening, the speed of change, as you can see, play out. And it really was only, Christmas time, January, we were all on holidays, the sun was shining, beautiful, hanging out with friends, family, traveling, going on cruises and so on. And it wasn't until Wuhan locked down that the possibility of this started to become just unbelievably magnified. And the rate and spread of that magnification has been huge. I'll just let the graphic roll again, because it kind of gives you the sense of how quickly from, we're talking a matter of weeks, and all of us have had plans and game plans and travel plans and stuff for the year of 2020, and amazing how quickly we've gone from full employment, full economy, everyone feeling generally pretty good with life, everyone in pretty good shape, to obviously a very different outlook, as pretty much the whole world has either locked down or faced into some pretty serious consequences of not locking down. So I think, the message for us as a community is, we didn't see it coming, it wasn't in our plans, and we've had to respond amazingly quickly. And again, to the regulators on the call and to the government who's not on the call, the clarity of leadership and the clarity of purpose and the engagement that we built collectively as a nation has put New Zealand in a pretty good position. Touch wood, it's still early days, but words like eradication are things that are starting to be spoken about, not overly broadly. Whereas if you contrast that to other places, flattening the curve is the objective, and New Zealand with its island nation status and secure borders has a chance. And I guess what that means is we've all got that part to play. The slide you're looking at now obviously just talks about the scale. So when you look at the 1,000 odd or the 11 or 1,200 odd in New Zealand compared to the 1.5 million in the places where they haven't managed it quickly, effectively and efficiently, we see it play out in the media, we see it play out every day, and there's some pretty shocking stuff happening in certain parts of the world. Fortunately, in our part of the world, and this kind of speaks to the broader outlook piece, the quick action, the effective action, the huge amounts of pain that we've all had to take, hopefully will put us in some kind of better stead as we look to the world beyond COVID-19 through the second half of 2020. So those are the numbers in New Zealand. I won't go through them. I think everyone's pretty clear on them, and irrespective of what media outlet you're reading, it's pretty much COVID wall to wall. So 3 weeks ago, if I just track back, this conversation started within the FSC. Many of you who turn up to our meetings, we started to reframe the way we had meetings. People were asking questions. Have you been traveling? Where have you been? We're not shaking hands. It's only, that conversation only started at the back end of February, and we've only just clicked through March. So pretty quickly we had to think, as we all have had to think about, what's this going to mean to the business? What's it going to mean to our clients? What's it going to mean to the sector? Ultimately, what's it going to mean to New Zealand? And so pretty quickly we framed up a response that's effectively got 3 areas of focus. The first one is around providing insight and guidance to government and regulators. The second one around supporting members and the broader sector. And the third one is providing education and informing consumers. The first one's become really, really important. I remember the conversation, it's only about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. We were all facing into having a conduct of financial institution submission due to MBIE. We had FSLA, start date not far over the horizon. And the very first conversation we collectively as a board and as a membership figured we had to have is we needed clarity on the timetable of all the reg activity that was coming down the pipe, and 2020 was, of course, a critical year. And with a lot of work and engagement right across the agencies and with the Minister, the message around effectively re-timetabling the entire reg agenda that was the 2020 reg agenda into a new and adjusted timetable. Some of it clearly can't be timetabled until COVID-19 gets a whole lot clearer in terms of the control. Some of it's been pushed out over 12 months, but there was a very clear focus and willingness engagement by the regulators and government, but equally from a sector perspective, the key point was the only issue right now is to serve customers. The only issue is to make sure that New Zealanders are okay with the lens of the product and services that our sector provides. And that clarity of purpose, which really from a leadership perspective came from government down, meant that the right decision was made. It was made quickly, it was made with insight, and it was made in the best interests of New Zealand. So I'll talk in a moment about waves, but it was really, really clear that this wave of change and wave of rethink had to happen really, really quickly. And so within the FSC, board is now meeting weekly. Committees have been consolidated into some key areas. And the insight piece is around giving really material information coming straight from the front line to the people making decisions. And I've got to say, again, there've been a couple of conversations with the Minister where I was able to share issues like, look, call centre rates in the KiwiSaver marketplace in the first couple of weeks as the market came off 20-odd%. You know, the main issue happening is people are scared. There's fear out there. And when there's fear out there, people make decisions that I think we all know can be rational on one hand and very irrational on another hand. And sometimes you make a call that advantages you in the short term to sleep at night, but actually costs you long term. And so having those kind of conversations and being able to talk about numbers, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600% spike in calls. This is what the flavour is. This is what's going on. This is what the call centres are hearing. And of course, this whilst all of our members were having to get remote access stood up across hundreds and in some cases thousands of staff is no easy feat. But you know, that kind of feels almost like old hat because we're now 3 weeks in and this is kind of how we're all operating and working. So message out of the blue box is providing insight and guidance to government and regulators is really critical. We've got mechanisms to do that and it's always on because the issues are always changing. In the last couple of, in fact, just last week, also in KiwiSaver, one of the big issues was around hardship and the hardship provisions. And for those on the line who know the KiwiSaver space really well, you know, you can't get documents signed right now by JPs unless you've got Zoom, unless you've got wet signatures, unless you've got some really good technology. And typically the people who are looking for hardship provisions are people who are stressed, they're in really difficult straits, and that's not able to be done. And so resolving that issue with members, with the FMA, with MB and with the Minister was a really effective way to try and solve the problem. So I guess I'm signalling under the blue box. The first wave has hit and broken. There's now a lot of subsequent conversations to have as we kind of head into the next month. In terms of, I'll come back to that slide, but in terms of the supporting our members piece, like I said, we've implemented weekly board meetings and basically shrunk the FSC from 22 committees into 6 key committees, focused on those key areas. And the focus there is just about what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening in the broader community, what are the things that the sector needs to consider and act and help reframe. So like a really good example, I've given the KiwiSaver investment ones, you know, within the life insurance space, it feels like it's a wave 2 issue. Number of policies have hardship provisions built into the terms and conditions. But as New Zealand readjusts their personal P&Ls and determine what they should be spending their money on, getting the word out there around, hey, if you've got life insurance, you're covered for COVID and whatever else your policy covers. If you're taking out new cover, likely the insurers will be asking you questions around where have you been and do you have any symptoms, not on COVID necessarily, but more broadly. And of course, some companies have needed to adjust some of their policy terms and conditions and benefits to take account of the COVID environment. But those are the messages that were coming out of the call centres. That was the message coming out of the market, and being able to go back out to consumers and articulate that and try and distill those key issues together was really important. We've been meeting closely with all regulators, and Rob and I met with the Reserve Bank on Monday. Obviously a big focus on many things, but certainly the life insurance sector, there was a wave of change coming, the phase 2 and 3 reviews, the actuarial reviews and so on, and the RB's been very effective at giving very clear signals about what the line of change looks like, but they're also obviously very keen to make sure that the sector is robust, sustainable, and serving consumers. So having that ability to have close connectivity has been really valuable. Look, final point on this one has just been about the advice and distribution discussion, noting that on the phone there are a number from that community. Obviously with FSLAR being delayed, it means a lot. There's a rethinking of, so what does it actually mean? And across the FSC, the Advice and Distribution Committee is working on that, and we will be working closely with the FMA and MB on, given the delay, what does it mean and what are some of the decision points that are going to become important. So from the supporting members perspective, it's about bringing members together, helping them understand and share insights, and working across globally and locally for that to happen. And the logos you see on the right-hand side pretty much reflect the local connection that we have with associations, some of the regional ones and some of the global ones. So we're all going through the same pain. The best we can share, the more we can share, the more effective we can be. If I just briefly talk back to the idea around the various waves of activity, wave 1 was really the March activity. It was just about scrambling, troubleshooting and getting intelligence to all the decision makers, and as a sector agreeing what was important and what was not important. So the what do you stop doing and what do you start doing decision tree became really important. The second wave, which really we framed up as April, the April wave is, there's a lot of, this is the new normal. There's a lot of tactical and technical things that need to be addressed. We've spent the last few days on some of the big 5 issues facing all the different parts of the sector, which we'll then start to have the conversation with the regulators on. I think wave 3 is probably where we're going to need to spend most of our time, frankly. The FSC has just been in market with a whole bunch of consumer research, which will release shortly. We started this conversation in November, December last year, and the reporting is only just starting to come through as we went in field in late Feb, early March. And what's been really interesting is the knife edge that New Zealanders' balance sheets are in, and this is in the shadow of COVID. How do people feel about their job security? How do people feel about their wealth? How well do they sleep at night? What are their money worries? What are their other worries? That's the kind of insight. There's good news and bad news. Sadly, it's mostly bad news, but it's going to be useful in terms of the wave 3 piece. Around 1 in 5 people have got advisors. Those people that have advisors have a tangible, a material, a noticeable benefit, not only in what they do with their money, how they think about money, but the psychological pieces that sit around that, the ability to sleep at night, the confidence about the decisions that they're making. And again, this is a message that's so critical, because when the pressure is on, and we didn't know the pressure would be this intense and this on, getting good guidance, getting good coaching, getting good advice is often the difference between making good long-term decisions and not. Of course, if 20% of people have advice, 80% of people don't. And I think this consumer resilience conversation, which is already all over the newspapers as we speak today, I think will only continue on. And I think the value of the sector, to Rob's earlier point, as an essential service is all about, this is our bread and butter. This is our moment of truth as a sector. This is what we do. what we do helps people navigate really stressful times, also joyful times. Sadly, we're in very stressful times, and so whether we're in insurance, life or health, or KiwiSaver investments, or advice, or whichever part of the value chain we're in, this is our time absolutely to step up and really acknowledge that the role we have is to coach and to guide and to help New Zealand kind of come through this. If I just bring us to the couple of last final points, and this is just around the messaging that we're trying to get into the marketplace. In the age of fake news and who do you trust, the FSC wants to be a trusted source of sensible and intelligent information, but we also want to send people to official channels. And so that's pretty much how we've crafted our broader media message. And so finally, to close it out before we just go to some Q&A, you know, we are in the money business. We do think long term. It is a no-brainer. We will come off lockdown at some point. It is also a no-brainer when you read the headlines of the last few days. There are businesses that are in real trouble. There are significant economic headwinds. I think we're going to hear more and more about that over the coming days and weeks ahead. Our challenge is, and our opportunities, we've got to stay connected to New Zealand. We've got to support our clients. We've got to support our customers. We've got to support our intermediaries. And we've got to play our part. And so if it's giving personal practical advice, if it's through call centres, we've got to be understanding that providing guidance is a critical part to what we're doing. We have to remain constructive and engage with government and regulators and continue to feed information through. And we've also got to stay optimistic and hopeful that New Zealand is really well placed relative to other parts of the world. There are other parts of the world that are in much worse and dire straits, but you know, New Zealand will become a domestic conversation much more than this kind of global world where we've pitched ourselves as 100% pure. If we're going to eradicate COVID, it's because we'll eradicate it in our borders and keep our borders closed until there's either a vaccine or until we start to trade with other countries that do the same thing. So I think that really links back to point number one. So I might close there and hand back to Rob for any final closing comments, and then I'll just have a quick look at the Q&A and see if there's any feedback that's coming in from the wires, and we'll try and address any questions as they turn up. Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I just more to close and go to Q&A. I think it's really important. I keep emphasising, you know, you guys are the professionals in the industry, and your first responsibility is to yourself and your family. If you don't get that right, then you're not much use to anyone else anyway. So it's really important to focus on yourself and your family. Stay balanced and as best you can. And seek help and seek support, and obviously, you know, that's what the FSC's main responsibility is, to support its members. So any way we can help, you know, we just need to know. And just again to emphasise that, you know, a lot of people are relying on the direction and guidance that we're giving. So you know. It is a very serious very serious game that we're playing, if it's a game of choice, I suppose.
Thanks, Rob.
Back to you, Richard.
Yeah, look, a couple of questions just around government support more broadly. What we've tried to do is basically send people straight to the government websites. I think there is a need for advice for people to understand what is available and how to access it. There's a lot of complexity around the overall package that the government's announced. Simple in some areas, more complex in others. And I do think that's an area that we can help with. So stand by for more of that. In terms of FSC Connect more broadly, we'll be running this twice a week. Tomorrow we have our government relations people just to shed some insight onto what's happening within government and how they're thinking. And then next week we're going to segue more broadly into the mental health and resilience conversation. So tomorrow you'll see an FSC Connect email from us. Again, feel free to join in. At 16:02, I don't see any more on the Q&A. I just say thank you for joining us. We will send out a poll. Really interested to know if this has been of any value, and obviously keen to reflect the content, to reflect where we're at. For anyone who's thinking the FSC conference is coming to town, it certainly is. At this point in time, we've got September lockdown, but we're keeping that pretty fluid. We've got some alternate dates in November and October. And just today in our conference and events committee, we started to think about, are there virtual programs we can do? So look out for that. Again, if you got any feedback on anything we're doing right across the FSC, please engage, please reach out. And on that note, I might close. And the question from Jason, are these slide packs available? Yep, thank you, Jason. What we will be doing is on our website under the FSC Connect banner, we'll have this video conference recorded, so that'll be there, plus all the slides that go along with that. So there'll be a library of this information. Folks, on that note, I know you can hear, I know I can't hear you back. That's the way this Zoom thing works, but appreciate you taking the time. Have a safe afternoon and a safe rest of the week, and enjoy the last 2 weeks of lockdown. Thanks for joining. Bye for now.